Hi everyone, welcome to our channel. This is Miss Byrd speaking. Today what we're going to do is we're going to solve quadratic equations using the quadratic formula. Now, there are several different ways to solve quadratic equations, and one of the ways is using the quadratic formula. So the quadratic formula, it says here, by completing the square for the quadratic equation, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, you can develop a formula that gives the solutions of any quadratic equation in standard form. This formula is called the quadratic formula. So the way it looks is this. This is the quadratic formula. So that's what we're going to use today to solve quadratic equations. So in order to do that, let's look at some examples. The directions say solve the equation using the quadratic formula. Round your solutions to the nearest tenth if necessary. Okay, so let's look at number 1. Now, your quadratic equations have to be set equal to 0. So if they're not, you're going to have to move some things around so that it's equal to 0. Since we're already set up equal to 0, we can just go ahead and get started. So x squared minus 6x plus 5 equals 0. So in order to use that formula, we need to make sure that your equation is set in standard form. Here in this case, it is in standard form because remember that standard form means that you have ax squared plus bx plus c. So because it's set up this way, your ax squared plus bx plus c, you're going to see here that a is 1, your b is negative 6, and c is 5. So we're going to use these numbers and plug it into the quadratic formula. So the quadratic formula, we're going to go ahead and write it down. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac. And all of this is over 2 times a. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and substitute, and that way we can solve for the equation. Okay, so wherever a is, we're going to plug in a 1, b, we're going to plug in negative 6, and c, we're going to plug in a 5. Okay, so here we have the equation is negative b. So we're going to keep that negative b, negative, but instead of b, we're going to substitute it with negative 6. So we have negative 6 here, plus or minus, then the square root. So b we said was negative 6, so inside the square root we're going to put negative 6 to the second power minus 4 times, okay, a we said was 1, and c is 5, so we say times 5. So all of this fits underneath the square root symbol. Then all of this is going to be over 2 times a, which is 2 times 1. All right. So it looks like it's a little busy, but it's actually not that bad. We're going to go ahead and simplify. A negative times negative 6 is positive 6. So far we have positive 6 plus or minus. Now we're going to simplify everything inside the square root. Negative 6 to the second power means negative 6 times negative 6, which is 36. So inside the square root we have 36. And now I'm going to simplify this. Negative 4 times 1 times 5 is negative 20. Then all of that over 2 times 1, which is 2. Okay, let's move on. So we're going to go ahead and simplify inside this radical, 36 minus 20. So I'm just going to bring down the 6 plus minus. And 36 minus 20 is 16. So we have the square root of 16. I think you can kind of see where we're going with this. Then we have 6 plus or minus 4 over 2. Okay, so what's happening here is two things. We have 6 plus 4 and we also have 6 minus 4. So this can be split up. So we have 6 plus 4 over 2. And we also have 6 minus 4 over 2. So when I simplify this, we end up with 10 over 2. And over here, we end up with 2 over 2. So our final answer is x equals 5 and x equals 1. So here's our final answer here. X equals 5, x equals 1. So those are the steps to do the quadratic formula. So let's try another example. We're going to try number 2. Okay, so we're going to use the formula again, the quadratic formula. So here A equals, well here there's an invisible 1. B is negative 10. And C is negative 11. Okay, so we're going to use that to plug into our formula. So the formula is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac. And all of that is over 2 times a. Okay, so now we're going to substitute. Okay, we're going to keep the negative, but instead of b, we're going to substitute it with a negative 10 plus or minus. Now here in the square root, we have b squared, so it's going to be negative 10 to the second power, minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is negative 11. And all of this is going to be over 2 times 1. Okay, let's simplify this. So a negative times negative is positive 10. So we have 10 plus or minus. Now inside the square root, we have negative 10 times negative 10, which is 100. And then here we're going to simplify this part. Negative 4 times 1 times negative 11 is positive 44. So we're going to say plus 44. All of this is over 2 times 1. Okay, 10 plus or minus 100 plus 44 is the square root of 144. So you can kind of see already where this is going. So we end up with 10 plus 12 over 2 and 10 minus 12 over 2. Okay, so when we simplify that, we end up with 22 over 2 and negative 2 over 2. It's not in simplest terms, so we have to simplify. So we end up with x equals 11 and x equals negative 1. So those are our solutions to the quadratic equation. Okay, let's try number 3. We're going to use the quadratic formula. But before, let's identify what is A. A in this case is negative 3. B is 2. And C is 7. So our formula is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Okay, we're going to go ahead and substitute. So we have negative b. Now b we said was positive 2, so I have negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 2 squared minus 4 times negative 3 times 7. And all of this is over 2 times negative 3. Okay, so now you have negative 2 plus or minus. 2 times 2 is 4. So inside the square root, we have 4. I'm going to simplify this part here. Negative 4 times negative 3 times 7 is positive 84. And all of this is over 2 times, actually let's simplify that. 2 times negative 3 is positive, oops, wrong one. It's positive 6. Okay. So we have -2 plus or minus the square root of, so here when you have 4 plus 84, you end up with the square root of 88 over -6. Okay, so what we can do is we can do several things here. I noticed that the square root of 88 is not a perfect square. So you can actually use a calculator to complete this. So I'm going to go to decimals.com to complete it since I'm using my computer and I don't have a graphing calculator. So you go to decimals.com, and I'm going to just go ahead and plug it in. So you can plug in the square root of 88, or you can plug in the whole thing that's there so that you can get your final answer. If I plug in the square root of 88, here it tells me it's 9.3803, 8, so forth. But we're going to round to the 10th, so I'm actually going to use 9.4. So when I go back, I'm going to go ahead and write it up here. So here we end up with -2 plus or minus 9.4 over -6. Okay, so we end up with -2 plus 9.4 over -6 and -2 minus 9.4 over -6. So you could actually use the calculator and plug this in as well. So you end up with 7.4 over -6. And over here we end up with -11.4 over -6. And our final answer is, now here it's actually approximately because we are rounding. So all of these should be approximately. So x is approximately, right here, when we do 7.4 divided by -6, we get -1.2. And here x is approximately -11.4 divided by -6 is +1.9. So that's our final answer here. So I hope this helps with using the quadratic formula and when you are trying to solve quadratic equations. Have a good day.